Hey everyone, and welcome. Today you're going to head all the way back to the beginning, Genesis chapter 2, to really try and uncover God's original perfect blueprint for all of humanity. And just a quick note, this devotional is brought to you by the You Need Faith in Jesus team, and we are so glad that you're here with us today. So let's kick things off with a really big question, right? Before sin ever entered the picture, before the fall, what was God's original perfect plan for life? I mean, what did that perfect life actually look like, according to the one who designed it all? So let's dive right in. We're going to look at Genesis chapter 2, but not just as some old story. Think of it more like a divine blueprint. It's like a master plan that lays out God's perfect design for three absolutely crucial areas of our lives: our rest, our purpose, and our relationship. All right, first up on the blueprint is rest. And get this, long before there were any 10 Commandments, God wove this rhythm of grace right into the very fabric of creation. In fact, the Sabbath, that was the very first thing he ever called holy. Wow. Okay, and what's so fascinating here is the actual Hebrew word for rest, Shabbat. See, it's not about being tired and needing a nap. God, he's all-powerful, right? He doesn't get tired. No, it literally means to cease from labor. It's this holy act of just stopping. It's about acknowledging that he's the one in control, he's the one who keeps everything going. And this idea, it just beautifully points to a much deeper spiritual truth, doesn't it? That Old Testament rest, it's like a giant signpost pointing to the ultimate rest we find in our salvation. Just like God ceased from his work of creation, this verse in Hebrews tells us that when we enter into his rest through faith, we stop trying to earn our own way. We cease from our own works. All right, let's move on to the second part of the blueprint, our purpose. After God establishes rest, he reveals our purpose, and it's this stunning combination of humility and a truly high calling. I mean, just listen to how Genesis 2 verse 7 paints this incredible picture. On one hand, you have God forming man from the dust of the ground, like a master potter carefully shaping clay. And that right there, that keeps us humble, right? We're connected to the earth. But then he breathes his own breath into him. That direct gift of spirit from God himself is what makes us totally unique. It's what allows us to have communion with him. It's this amazing mix of dust and divinity. And right there in the middle of the garden, this purpose is kind of framed by these two very important trees. You've got the tree of life, which was all about that unending fellowship, that connection with God. And then there was the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Now, this one was so important because it represented a real, meaningful choice. See, God wasn't making robots. He gave us genuine moral freedom. And here's something that's so important for us to get. Work was part of this perfect plan. Genesis 2:15 tells us that man was given a divine job, to dress it and to keep it. Work wasn't some curse that happened later. No, it was a dignity, a responsibility we were given before sin ever entered the picture, to cultivate and take care of God's amazing creation. Of course, with that amazing gift of choice came one very clear rule. God warned that eating from that one tree would lead to death. The original Hebrew is even more intense than our English translation. It's literally dying you shall die, which points to that instant spiritual separation from God. This one rule established his loving authority, and just as Romans 6:23 confirms for us later, the consequence of disobedience is always death. And that brings us to the third and final piece of God's incredible blueprint: relationship. Up to this point in the creation story, everything has been good. But now, for the very first time, God says something is not good, and that's for man to be alone. So, what was God's solution? He said he would make a help meet for Adam. But that phrase in Hebrew, ezer kenegdo, it is so powerful. The word ezer is often used in the Old Testament to describe God as our helper. So there's absolutely no sense of being inferior here. And kenegdo, it means corresponding to him, like a perfect match, the way your two hands fit together perfectly when you clasp them. It's a beautiful picture of partnership. And the way God actually created woman is just filled with this incredible symbolism. Think about it, not from his head, to rule over him, not from his feet, to be trampled by him, but from his side, to be his equal, under his arm, to be protected, and right there, near his heart, to be loved. And all of this leads to the very first institution God ever established for humanity, marriage. This verse, Genesis 2:24, it lays out God's unchangeable design. A man is to leave his parents. That's a public declaration that his new family is the priority. He's to cleave to his wife. That's a permanent, unbreakable bond. And together, they become something entirely new. A single unit, one flesh. Okay, so we've walked through God's perfect design for rest, for purpose, and for relationships. So the big question for us right now is, how in the world do we apply this blueprint to our lives today, living in a broken world? Let's just try to break it down into 3 simple, practical steps. Number 1, prioritize sacred rest. I mean, really intentionally stop. Turn off the noise, cease from the endless work, and just connect with God. Number 2, embrace your divine purpose. See the dignity God put in your work and remember that obedience is one of the highest forms of worship. And number 3, cultivate godly relationships. We have to fight against isolation and intentionally honor God's beautiful design for community, for marriage, and for family. So, I want to leave you with this one final thought to really chew on. Knowing that Genesis 2 is God's perfect original design for us to flourish, what's one intentional thing you can do just this week to start realigning your life a little more closely with His amazing blueprint? Hey, thank you so much for joining us for this devotional. If you want to learn more, we'd love for you to visit the You Need Faith in Jesus team. We'll see you next time.